This is TWiT.
Nostalgia. Gotta love it. I spent this morning, actually, digging around through my boxes because I did just recently move, trying to find the device I know is hiding out somewhere, my Pebble. And that is because there's some great news to talk about when it comes to Pebble. Joining us today to talk about that great news is Eric Migicovsky. Welcome back, Eric. How are you?
Thank you. It's good to be back. Yeah, there's a blast from the past this week.
Although I hear for you, it's not quite a blast from the past because you've been using your Pebble for a while. I want to talk about that. That's awesome. It's right there on your wrist. So let's kick things off, though. If somebody were not familiar with Pebble and what we're talking about here, maybe we should start there. Although, again, I have a feeling that this crowd either has owned one or has heard about it.
It's funny. It's been so long that there are people who they were alive when Pebble came out, but they weren't part of the tech ecosystem and community. And I've been talking to them, and it's kind of fun. They're like, "What's Pebble? What is that?" I'm like, "How old are you?" And I'm high school. There was something special about Pebble that brought it to a really wide audience, and I'm kind of excited that 8 years later, a new generation might hear about it. So for those who haven't had the pleasure, Pebble is and was one of the first smartwatches. I think I don't know if we coined the term, but I started working on smartwatches in 2008, originally making one for BlackBerry, another blast from the past.
Wow.
So the first watch that I made worked with BlackBerry. And then in 2012, we announced Pebble. And Pebble was the first watch that really went viral. People heard about it. What made Pebble special, though, is, and I guess we could chat about this more, also, coincidentally, the reason why I think it's time to bring it back. So what made Pebble a Pebble was its e-paper screen, which is a low-power, always-on, daylight-readable, reflective screen, rather than emissive, which pushes light out of it. There's e-paper, long battery life, lasted for a week plus. Fairly simple feature set. Like, we didn't try to boil the ocean and do everything that your phone could do. Focused on things like notifications, telling time. Who would expect your watch to be really good at telling time? Music control. We had physical buttons. We have physical buttons on the watch, so you could press the button to play, pause, skip tracks. You don't have to look at a touch screen and hit the right tiny little icon. And it was hackable. Anyone who wanted could write a watch face or build an app for Pebble. And that was it, basically. Like, there's, a lot more that people did with it, but that was the core of what Pebble is.
Yeah, and I think that's what ended up being the delight for many people. You talk about in your blog post the surprise of all those watch faces that are available for Pebble that were not for the Apple Watch. So we should not continue to kind of beat around the bush here. What's the new news? Because I think people will be very excited about this.
Yeah, so the big news this week is that Google open sourced Pebble OS. So in 2016, Pebble sold its IP to Fitbit. Fitbit got bought by Google. And so, there's always a bigger fish world in tech. Pebble now is under Google. They weren't doing anything with it. And so about a year ago, I asked very politely if they could open source the Pebble OS code base. Now, this is the software that runs on the watch itself. And they said yes.
Wow.
They didn't have to, and I'm incredibly thankful that they did. And on Monday, they published a GitHub repo that has the entire source code for Pebble's operating system. This was unavailable before. There was no way to build software for Pebble or kind of compile and run the Pebble operating system. It still works perfectly. That's the crazy part. Like, this watch is 8 years old, 9 years old. It hasn't had an update in 8 years.
Wow.
And it still works great. And I think that's a testament to the quality of engineering work and product design that the Pebble team put in, between 2012 and 2016, in that it still works. Like, what other gadgets do you have from 10 years ago that you could turn on, connect to a phone?
Right.
Like, you can't, the first generation Apple Watch doesn't even work anymore.
Yeah, that was one of the things that really stood out to me. The folks at iFixit helped with the making sure that if your battery had gone bad in your Pebble, that you could get a replacement for that. And it's funny, the Pebble, because I do still have mine, because I think it's just a testament to that time. And also, it was, for me, that moment of excitement of not only a Kickstarter project being a success and being part of that, but also it actually shipping. So all of that is built into this totem that is the Pebble smartwatch for me.
And in my opinion, like, I think we've lost a little bit of that gadget awe and optimism that maybe we had in spades 10 plus years ago. Like, there was an era of gadget blogging that I loved, like the Gizmodo and Gadget, where I was a bit younger, and I just loved reading about gadgets. There was something special to me about a gadget because it's like a gadget that just doesn't take itself too seriously. It's not trying to change the world. It's just there. It exists. And maybe it helps you smile a little bit during the day. It doesn't, have to be more than that. And I think we doubled down on that at Pebble. Like, we made it quirky and fun. The OS had these little flares, like when you were charging the watch, a coffee cup, like the icon was a coffee cup that would fill up to the brim and there'd be a little bit of steam rising off the top of the cup. Like, that was fun.
Surprise and delight, right?
Yeah.
And this is, so I want to talk about what's been going on between the time that Pebble was acquired by Fitbit, which was then acquired by Google, and now, because there were some people out there who figured out how to make it work. Can you talk about the open source hacky community?
I took a break starting in 2016. I'd spent 9 years working on smartwatches, and I was like, "This is good. We built something nice. Go do something else." I went to work at Y Combinator for a bit. But luckily for me and for the entire Pebble community, an open source group of hackers called the Rebel Alliance, REBBLE, took it upon themselves to reverse engineer the web services that Pebble had, the App Store, and offer that as free software to the community. And so for the last 8 years, this group, the Rebel Alliance, has been hosting hackathons, sponsoring contests to build new Pebble apps, and basically keeping the community kind of fresh and enthusiastic. You can see on their Discord, there's thousands of people that are chatting about Pebble. And one thing that I love is you can still go to the Pebble subreddit, r/Pebble. And every week there's like someone posting about, or actually every day probably, there's people posting about Pebble and sharing their favorite watch faces, or even new apps. Like 8 years later, after there are no more watches being built, people were still writing new apps for Pebble, which is pretty special.
Now, how many iterations of Pebble did the company make before Pebble was acquired by Fitbit? I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 3.
So there was Pebble, the OG Pebble, as we called it, in 2012. Pebble Steel in 2014. Pebble Time in 2015, and then Pebble 2 in 2016.
Got it. So there were 4 total. Yes, Pebble Steel was one that escaped my memory. So now we're talking about with Pebble's operating system being open sourced, and with the I think still robust and excited community that exists there. Is it time to bring back Pebble? Are we going to have new hardware? That's kind of wild. That's kind of exciting.
So I have a problem. I'm running out of Pebbles. Luckily, I obviously, having worked at Pebble, I had a big stash. And so over the last 10 years, I've been kind of working my way through. But, even great hardware doesn't last forever.
Right.
Albeit it's lasted extraordinarily long. You can replace the batteries. Like you mentioned, iFixit has a bunch of tutorials on how to do it. You go on YouTube and there's like how to replace the Pebble buttons, how to replace the Pebble everything. It's cool. But I used to tell people that you could buy a Pebble on eBay, but the prices are either skyrocketing, like hundreds of dollars, or there's just none available anymore. So what's going to happen? I decided to start making new Pebble watch hardware that will run Pebble OS. I'm going to do it a little bit differently this time. So whereas last time we did it as kind of a prototypical startup, we raised money, built out a big team, had up to 100 plus people working at Pebble. It taught me a lot about how to build a sustainable operation. And this time around, I think the number one goal is how do we build this in a sustainable manner? And I mean that sustainable in that we will continue building hardware long into the future and continue being able to support the operating system and update it and publish new features and that kind of thing. So we're starting small. We're not going to try to do too much all at once. We're going to build, a watch and get it out there and see what people think. And then if it's successful and we earn enough money, we'll reinvest that in building, maybe more watches. We'll kind of cross that bridge when we get to it. But the name of the game is sustainability. So it's going to be a small company, no venture backing, and just, building kind of in public and taking it one step at a time.
Yeah. Is that, I feel like that's not common these days, right? That you say no venture backing, and that in and of itself, to me, it's giving an underdog vibe in a good way. I mean that in like you're cheering it on. You're saying, what can you do in that very small, sustainable way? But you would know better than I when it comes to, I guess it's the mixture of hardware and not going venture backing that is interesting. Do you feel like it's because of your knowledge up to this point of the things that you made? I even read about the I think it was a relative of yours who was asking you for help hacking a BlackBerry to display things on the ceiling. Like, you clearly have some electrical engineering knowledge there.
So I think the essence of this is, I wrote a blog post 10 years after the first Kickstarter, kind of reminiscing and looking back and kind of analyzing some of the story. I think what I recognized is that I think I'm more of an inventor than an entrepreneur.
Okay.
I love creating products and I love using those products. And I very greedily want this product to exist. And so my plan is to make sure that the elements that are needed to keep building these type of products exist. And that doesn't necessitate selling tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of watches. Like, we can build, like I said, a sustainable company without having to make it big. If it's big, great, but it doesn't have to be. And I think most of the premise of a traditional startup is that, the definition of a startup based on kind of PG's, Paul Graham's work is, startup is a company that's designed to grow quickly. And I think this is not a startup. It's a company designed to build great products, get them out into the world. And if growth happens, great, but it's not a prerequisite.
Yeah, it sounds very much like a passion project. I think lastly, I'd ask anything you can share for the people who are curious. You had a little bit of an FAQ that we'll, of course, link to, but Are we imagining a watch that is 3 times the size of the current one? What are we expecting when it comes to this?
Expect literally a Pebble. Expect whatever the last Pebble you had. Like, expect that. This is also recognizing. I think I've recognized that products and software can be done. You can finish something. Like, it doesn't have to continually change and add new features and Like, you can be done something. And I'm not saying that Pebble is done in that there's literally never going to be a change ever again.
Right.
But
right.
I'm still using the same watch with the same software that was there 8 years ago. It's better than the alternative, which is wild to me that, like, no one in the last 8 years has built something that's remotely comparable or usable to the set of features that I'm looking for out of a smartwatch. And plenty of people in the last couple of days have talked to me and said, "Oh, is it going to have this feature? Is it going to have that feature? It's going to be like this." I'm like, no, it's going to be like a Pebble. There's plenty of other options. Like, there's just no options for the people that want this exact set of features. And that's all we're saying.
Nice. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join me today on the show, for getting us excited about the return of Pebble, and of course the open sourced code that you went and said, "Hey, look, is it possible you could make this available?" And that's pretty cool too. So all of that work coming together, I know that there are many people out there who are listening to the show who, like I said, probably own Pebble or Pebbles, and are looking forward to seeing what's next. So thank you again for your time. And if people want to stay up to date with everything, is there a place that they should go to follow you? Or tell us.
Check out repebble.com. Sign up for the waitlist. We'll be sharing a lot more information about new stuff, how you can help if you want to be part of the community and help kind of on the software side as well. Join the fun.
Awesome. Thanks so much.